Gollum killed Frodo's parents. Frodo's parents, Drogo and Primula Baggins, drowned in a boating accident on the Brandywine River when Frodo was just 12 years old. The theory says Gollum murdered them while searching for the ring. After Bilbo stole the ring in The Hobbit, Gollum only had 2 clues, Baggins and Shire. He's an adept swimmer with a long history near water, making this right up his alley. Gandalf tells Frodo that Gollum never made it to the Shire, but supporters argue he could have lied to spare Frodo the pain. When Gollum reached the Brandywine searching for Bilbo, he could have easily mistaken Drogo Baggins as his target. The timeline matches Gollum's years-long hunt. If true, this makes Bilbo sparing Gollum and Frodo showing him mercy even more tragic. Without Gollum, Frodo would never have been orphaned, but Gollum also wouldn't have been there to destroy the ring by falling into Mount Doom. Tom Bombadil is the music of the Ainur. Tom calls himself the eldest, claims to remember the first raindrop and first acorn, and says he knew the dark under the stars before the Dark Lord came from outside. Morgoth was the last of the Ainur to enter Arda, meaning Tom existed before him. The theory argues Tom is the physical manifestation of the music of creation itself. He wields power through song, singing creatures into submission. The music of creation has no will or mind of its own, just flowing with existence, which perfectly describes Tom's personality and total lack of interest in good versus evil. The ring has no power over him because the music simply is. When Frodo asks Goldberry who Tom is, she responds, "He is," echoing God's "I am that I am" from Exodus. Though Tolkien denied this specific God reference, Tom's fundamental nature as pure existence fits. He's unaffected by corruption because he predates and transcends it entirely. His status as the song incarnate explains his ancient power without making him a Vala or Maya. The eagles were Gandalf's plan all along. After Gandalf escapes Saruman's imprisonment atop Orthanc by Eagle, he decides this is the best way to catch Sauron by surprise. The theory claims Gandalf planned to lead the Fellowship through the Misty Mountains to meet the eagles who nest there. He kept it secret from everyone to avoid Sauron or Saruman learning his true intentions. This explains why Gandalf was reluctant to pass through Moria. It took them south, away from the eagles. When forced to fight the Balrog, Gandalf realized they'd be parting ways and tried to impart his secret plan with "Fly, you fools." But the Fellowship believed he meant flee. Supporters note Gandalf headed north after being resurrected toward Eagle territory. The theory suggests after returning as Gandalf the White, he forgot many things, including the Eagle plan. This would explain the plot hole many fans see, except Tolkien himself called eagles a dangerous plot device he needed to use sparingly to maintain credibility. Balrogs definitely have wings. In Fellowship, the Balrog's shadow reached out like 2 vast wings. Then later, its wings were spread from wall to wall. Supporters argue this isn't metaphor, it's literal description. In the Silmarillion, Balrogs arose and passed with winged speed when Morgoth called them. The appendices describe the Balrog flying from Thangorodrim. Peter Jackson's films and The Rings of Power both depict Balrogs with visible wings. The counter-argument asks why the Balrog didn't fly after falling from the bridge of Khazad Dûm. Supporters respond that Glorfindel's Balrog also fell to its death, and dragons Smaug and Ankalagon both fell despite having wings. Being stunned, the narrow chasm, or pursuit of Gandalf, could explain why it didn't fly. Christopher Tolkien stated the matter was up in the air, and he never thought the second wings mentioned differed from the first. Tolkien's own changing conception of Balrogs, from hundreds in early drafts to just 3 to 7 in later writings, adds to the ambiguity. The Hobbit films are Bilbo's exaggerated retelling. The trilogy is bloated with CGI, over-the-top action, and runs 9 hours for a short children's book. One theory explains this as intentional. The films represent Bilbo's hyperbolic version of his adventures, the same stories he told captive Hobbit audiences for years in the Shire. The excessive dwarf barrel surfing, physics-defying escapes, and video game cutscene action sequences make sense if Bilbo embellished everything. In Fellowship, Frodo tells old Bilbo, "My adventure turned out to be quite different from his uncle's tales," suggesting Bilbo's version was inflated. The original novel has a lighter, more whimsical tone, while the films tried matching Lord of the Rings' epic scale. If the movies show Bilbo's retelling rather than objective truth, the tonal shift, added characters like Tauriel and Legolas, and focus on grand battles all make sense. It's Bilbo making himself and his dwarf friends seem more heroic than they actually were. Gandalf couldn't solve the Doors of Durin riddle. At Moria's entrance, Gandalf sits for hours, unable to figure out "speak, friend, and enter." Only when Frodo suggests the password is literally the Elvish word for friend does Gandalf open the door. The theory claims this wasn't forgetfulness or stupidity. Gandalf never wanted to enter Moria. He'd repeatedly stated he wanted to avoid the dark caves and tried every other route first. He was reluctant the entire time. By pretending he couldn't solve a simple riddle, he gave the Fellowship an excuse to turn back without revealing his knowledge of the danger inside. Gandalf knew something terrible lurked in Moria, likely the Balrog. The theory suggests he delayed solving the puzzle intentionally, hoping the group would give up and choose another path. It was only Frodo's innocent helpfulness that forced the door open. This explains why such a brilliant wizard struggled with basic wordplay. He wasn't struggling, he was stalling, buying time to find another way. Saruman ate the Shire's chief. This comes from a deleted book subplot called The Scouring of the Shire. After the ring's destruction, Saruman and Grima Wormtongue attempted to tyrannically seize control of the Shire. When Frodo offers Wormtongue mercy, Saruman reveals that Worm murdered their chief Lotho Baggins. Saruman states, stabbed him in his sleep, I believe. Buried him, I hope, though Worm has been very hungry lately. That last phrase is key. Given Saruman's general evil characterization and Wormtongue's desperate state, fans theorize the very hungry lately line suggests cannibalism. Saruman was strongly implying Wormtongue ate Lotho's body instead of burying it. Wormtongue then snaps and kills Saruman. When Saruman's spirit rose as a pale, shrouded figure begging redemption, a cold wind from the west rejected him, bending him away and dissolving him to nothing. His soul was refused entry to the afterlife, possibly for this final evil act. Frodo was never meant to destroy the ring. At the Council of Elrond, after Frodo places the ring on the table, he experiences extreme uneasiness. When Elrond says the ring must be destroyed, Frodo's discomfort increases, and he hears Sauron's voice calling to him. As the council argues, Sauron's voice intensifies. Frodo sees flames in the ring, then suddenly stands declaring he'll take it to Mordor. He doesn't say he'll destroy it, just take it there. The theory argues this was obedience to Sauron, not resistance. Frodo never truly shook off those bad feelings or resolved to destroy the ring. Throughout the journey, what seemed like resistance to the ring was actually Sauron empowering him to bring it home. This explains why Frodo ultimately fails at Mount Doom, claiming the ring for himself instead of destroying it. The quest only succeeded because Gollum was there to bite off Frodo's finger and accidentally fall into the fire. Frodo himself admits afterward that without Gollum, he couldn't have destroyed it. The quest would have failed at the bitter end. Radagast was the true intelligence gatherer. Radagast the Brown appears weak compared to Gandalf and Saruman, more concerned with nature than the War of the Ring. The theory suggests this is a cover. Radagast secretly played a vital intelligence role, using his animals to spy and send reports to the White Council. His strong relationship with birds and beasts gave him an unmatched information network across Middle-earth. He could have used his connection with the Eagles to persuade them to help Gandalf during critical moments, explaining their convenient arrivals. The theory argues Radagast worked behind the scenes, gathering crucial intelligence about Sauron's movements, troop positions, and plans. His absence from major events wasn't weakness or disinterest, but operational necessity. A spy can't maintain cover while fighting in battles. The old mysterious figure who appeared to the three hunters on the edge of Fangorn Forest was possibly Radagast using his shape-changing abilities to scout, though Gandalf dismissed this. Radagast's role was vital but invisible by design. Gollum is the ring's personality, not Sméagol's. Most people think Gollum is what Sméagol became after the ring corrupted him. This theory suggests Gollum is a universal personality that the ring imposes on anyone who possesses it long enough, not Sméagol's split personality. Evidence. Bilbo begins showing Gollum characteristics after holding the ring for decades, becoming possessive and hostile. In the book, when others hold the ring, they display similar behavior patterns. Gollum is the ring's own voice, part of Sauron's soul manifesting as a distinct personality. Anyone keeping the ring eventually develops the Gollum persona, talking to themselves, calling it my precious, and exhibiting the same mannerisms. Sméagol didn't split into two people. The ring created Gollum as its own defense mechanism. The argument is strengthened by how universally the ring affects everyone, from Boromir's aggression to Galadriel's terrifying vision of power. The ring has its own will. Gollum is what that will sounds like. Gimli's hair gift was historically significant. When leaving Lothlorien, Galadriel gives each Fellowship member a gift. Gimli simply asks for one strand of her hair, and she gives him 3. This seems small until you know the history. Thousands of years earlier, Ainur, one of the most powerful elves ever, asked Galadriel 3 times for a lock of her hair. She refused every time, despite his status and pleas. Yet she gave 3 hairs to a dwarf who only asked once because she commanded him to request something. The theory highlights this represents the healing of the ancient rift between elves and dwarves. Feanor's pride versus Gimli's humility. Feanor wanted her hair for his own glory. Gimli wanted it as a treasure to remind him of her beauty. The gift symbolizes that true nobility comes from character, not status. Galadriel recognized Gimli's genuine heart. This moment is why Gimli and Legolas became such close friends despite centuries of racial hatred. One strand of hair helped bridge an ages-old divide. Arwen replaced Glorfindel to honor Lúthien. In Tolkien's book, the elf Glorfindel saves Frodo from the Ringwraiths and carries him to Rivendell. Peter Jackson cut Glorfindel entirely and gave his heroic moment to Arwen. This seems like pandering to add a female warrior, but the theory suggests deeper meaning. Arwen is a direct descendant of Lúthien, the first-age elf who chose mortality for love of a mortal man, Beren. Tolkien explicitly compared Arwen to Lúthien throughout the books, even having Aragorn mistake Arwen for Lúthien when they first met. By giving Arwen warrior abilities, Jackson captured Lúthien's character. Lúthien was one of the most powerful elves ever, using magic and courage to infiltrate Morgoth's fortress and recover a Silmaril. She fought battles, cast spells, and made the ultimate sacrifice for love. Arwen's character arc mirrors this completely. Jackson's change wasn't meaningless. It reflected Tolkien's poetic intent by showing Arwen as Lúthien reborn. We'll likely never see Lúthien depicted on screen, so Arwen became the closest representation. Sam wrote the Red Book and lied about everything. The Lord of the Rings is presented as Tolkien, translating the Red Book of Westmarch, supposedly written by Bilbo and Frodo, then finished by Sam. The dark theory suggests Frodo actually died during the journey, falling to his injuries or the ring's corruption. To spare Middle-earth the painful truth and give his friend a happy ending, Sam wrote the entire quest as fiction. He made Frodo the hero who resisted the ring and lived. In reality, Frodo failed and perished, but Sam couldn't let that be his friend's legacy. The theory points to how much the narrative focuses on Sam's perspective and devotion. Sam was the true hero, carrying Frodo up Mount Doom, resisting the ring's temptation, and never giving up. By writing Frodo as the ring-bearer who survived, Sam ensured his beloved master would be remembered with honor. It's tragic, but shows Sam's ultimate loyalty, rewriting history to protect Frodo's memory and spare him from being known as the one who failed. Merry and Pippin sabotaged the quest for adventure. The two young hobbits aren't as innocent as they appear. Evidence suggests they manipulated events to ensure Frodo left the Shire with the ring. Merry admits he and Pippin had been spying on Frodo for weeks. They conveniently show up at exactly the right moment to help him escape. They knew about the ring before Gandalf told them. The theory argues they were working a hidden agenda to experience adventure or escape the Shire themselves. They push Frodo into increasingly dangerous situations rather than encouraging him to turn back. At the Council of Elrond, they loudly volunteer for the Fellowship, ensuring inclusion despite being the least qualified members. Rather than loyal friends, they're saboteurs who saw Frodo's burden as their ticket to excitement beyond the Shire's borders. Their bumbling mistakes that lead the Fellowship into danger, from disturbing Moria's well to starting fires on Weathertop, might be intentional sabotage. The theory paints them as selfish thrill-seekers who manipulated their innocent cousin into a death quest. Their later heroism could be guilt-driven redemption. The One Ring physically transforms bearers into Gollum. Forget corruption or power lust. The theory argues the ring's ultimate fate for any bearer was physical transformation into something Gollum-like. Bilbo shows the beginning stages after 60 years: extended life, physical changes, possessiveness, isolation. The ring doesn't just corrupt mentally, it literally reshapes you into its optimal vessel. Sméagol took 500 years to become fully Gollum. Bilbo was on the same path, just earlier in the process. The ring needs a carrier that can survive indefinitely and remain hidden. Gollum's form is perfect, long-lived, cave-dwelling, obsessed with preserving it. Frodo would have eventually become another Gollum had he kept it. Isildur was heading that direction too. The theory suggests Sauron designed the ring to transform bearers into protective Gollum creatures, explaining why Gollum survived so long and stayed hidden. It's not just a personality, it's the ring's final form for its bearer, the ultimate horror. Everyone would become that wretched thing eventually. The Third Age was the Age of Men because Sauron wanted it. Sauron forged the One Ring to control all the rings of power, but he gave most rings to men, not elves or dwarves. 9 for men, 7 for dwarves, 3 for elves. The theory argues this wasn't random. Sauron knew men were corruptible, weak-willed, and power-hungry. He deliberately gave them the most rings because he planned to turn them into his servants. The 9 became the Nazgul, his most powerful weapons. Elves were too resistant. Dwarves were too stubborn. But men? Men he could control perfectly. By creating the Nazgul and corrupting other kingdoms of men, Sauron ensured the Age of Elves would end. He forced the elves to leave Middle-earth by making it too dangerous and corrupted for them. This wasn't an accident of history, it was Sauron's deliberate plan. The Third Age became the Age of Men, not because of human superiority, but because Sauron systematically removed every other power from Middle-earth. He weaponized humanity's flaws to achieve dominance.